Lifelong learners, we have a super special treat today. David and Sissy, thank you guys so much for being here on the Parenting IQ podcast.
We're so
Love being in your
honored.
company.
Yeah, this is awesome. So you guys first of all, we are here in your own little world. So I'm with my own eyes seeing the work that you both do, dedicating your life to serve these kids. And I'm so grateful, first of all, for what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Expanding this, not just brick and mortar, this beautiful little yellow house that you have here in Nashville, but online as well. So thank you both for your work that you do.
Thank
You got the full experience because one of our therapy dogs just ran straight up to you on the way in.
I
You
know.
are really getting
I'm here.
immersed.
I'm here for all of it. I love it. But today I wanted to bring 4 different pieces that I want to unpack with you both and your experience and your knowledge. The first piece is emotional regulation. The second is communication, self-esteem, and then screen time and use. All right. So before we tap into all of that, in your professional opinion and experience, what do you think is at the core of the mental health state our kids are currently in?
Well,
Great question.
I know we probably have several answers. I mean, one is, well, I don't even know how to nail it down to one. I mean, I think it's very impacted by technology, but I think one of the things, I was doing a podcast interview once and a woman said, I think that we are the first generation of healthy parents. And I think that is certainly the intention in a way I've never seen before. We have both been counseling 30 plus years, and I feel like parents are trying harder than they have ever tried. And researching more, learning more, following more people on their devices. I'm pointing at my phone over here, but all of those things. And I think part of the fallout of that, the benefit is we do know more. But on the flip side of that, we're a lot older than you are. My mom had one parenting author she read, Dr. Benjamin Spock. And the only information she took from that was smile a lot at your children.
That's why you smile a lot.
Right. Yes. And if you met my sister, you'd say the same thing. It's so funny. But I mean, she wasn't inundated with, I have to get this right and I have to get that right and I have to do this and I have to do that. And here we are all three in this space of trying to help and equip parents. And at the same time, I worry that parents are overeducated, moms especially, to the point that now they're not trusting their own now they're not trusting their own intuition.
So good.
And so I think that is a piece of it. And there's this sense of I'm jumping in more than I might have naturally and rescuing more than I might even naturally to the child's detriment without realizing it and letting them learn to problem solve on their own, develop resilience, work through their own anxiety, all regulate themselves, all of those things. But I think it's with the very best of intentions. I just think it's too much.
So good. Yeah. David, what do you think?
Good. I would only add to that in saying this. I agree with Sissy. The low-hanging fruit is technology, and we could talk all day, and there's no question in any of our minds that has played not just a role, but a significant role. But if I were to think beyond that, I have so many concerns about the acceleration of every space where kids operate. The way we've accelerated their academic world. I think about the classic phrase of kindergarten is the new first grade. Well, it turns out that's 100% true.
Right.
Like we look back 50 years ago at what we were doing in first grade then, it's what we're doing in kindergarten now. And travel on up. My kids in 8th grade took classes I took in high school. In high school, they took classes I took in college. So we've hijacked that space and accelerated it. And the athletic space, at one point in time, the only quote unquote sport I played was kickball in my backyard in the elementary years. And now we think we've got to start organized sports with kids. There's a sign in my neighborhood every time a new season starts, and they're advertising for kids 3 to 14. And I'm like, oh, I wish more 3-year-olds just got to roll around in the backyard than us believing we've got to uniform you and do this organized experience.
You started walking. Great. Here you go.
There it is. There it is. And all the different ways I think that filters out and the way not just kids, but parents absorb that pressure. Like I need to have my foot slammed on the gas. We need to be doing more. And I think overscheduling is a huge piece of it. And, we've talked a lot over the last several years about how many kids and parents we're seeing absorb the pressure of junior and senior year, and the game, I think is the best word to assign to it, of getting into college even. And where, kids feel this sense like, I've got to have an impressive resume with an insane, ACT, SAT score, and have taken this many AP and honors classes, and have started a nonprofit sometime between my 16th and 18th year.
Seriously.
And this reality that, I have laughed with Sissy and said, when I applied to the University of Tennessee, the only requirement needed was a pulse. Really, that's all that I
And a
needed.
check, right?
Exactly,
Right,
a pulse
there
and a
you go.
checkbook. And I'm just grieved at the pressure kids experience, not just them, but at so many turns that I think kids absorb, parents absorb, that I think is a key contributing factor.
Could not agree more. So with both of you guys, that's so good. In fact, I watched the documentary, and it was a hockey guy, and I forget Z something. He's from Canada. Anyways, in that documentary, he talked about exactly what you're saying. In my backyard, when I got home from school, I would literally take my hockey stick and my puck and just go play. And then he's like, you look at these kids today, and he's one of the greatest of all time hockey players, saying this to basically parents, crying out, hey, it doesn't have to be with the coach, with like 24/7. You breathe these, competitive things. It's suffocating. It's really suffocating. In his words, so you're trying to do good, right? It's like you said, Sissy, good intentions.
Yes.
But too often we do too much, and nobody has time to breathe,
Right.
kids or parents.
Right.
So now we are going to lean into the emotional regulation part. Sissy, I'm going to go to you for this one. And David, feel free to chime in if you have something to add, okay? But emotional regulation obviously is extremely crucial for kids
Yes.
and their development. What would you say are practical strategies that we can implement at home that is going to help us identify, because it's important to see it, and then understand it, but then manage their emotions in healthy ways?
Yes, those are great questions. I mean, a few things. Well, David and I both have workbooks for elementary age kids. His for boys is called Strong and Smart, and mine for girls is Braver, Stronger, Smarter. And in them, we have a little drawing of a boy and a girl each, and they are supposed to identify where in the body they start to feel dysregulated. And kids are amazing. I mean, you know this. If you ask a kid, they know immediately where they start to feel it. My hands start to get sweaty, or my tummy feels funky, or I had a little girl who said, I feel it first in my bow. I still don't know what that means, but I loved it. But they know when they start to get worked up. We don't as adults often, because we're not taking the time. We're out of touch with our bodies. We're moving too fast. And so I think, number one, having conversations with kids about that, because the sooner we stop the progression of our amygdala taking over, which is what's happening when any of us are dysregulated, the sooner we stop, the easier it is to correct. And so understanding the signs in our bodies first. And then we talk a lot about breathing and movement. I mean, the basics of that, because we know when we can regulate our breathing, take deep diaphragmatic, how do you say that word? Diaphragmatic breaths, then we are going to dilate the blood vessels of our brain, shift the blood flow straight back to the prefrontal cortex that helps us think rationally and manage our emotions. And so when you feel it in your body, when you're noticing your child's getting dysregulated, hey, buddy, let's take 3 deep breaths. Or sometimes with boys, they can't get to breathing until, as David talks about, they need to move. They have to move first. And so go run 3 laps around the kitchen island, or go run outside and play for a minute, and just letting them burn off some of that excess energy, I think, can be really helpful. And then the third thing I would say, we love when families have code words, because I think there's something about, David can plug his ears, but you and I would know this, that when you're living in a dorm or a sorority house or something like that as a female, and one person starts her period, and then all of a sudden the whole hall's on their period, I think there's something about the amygdala that does the same thing. And in a family, when one child's amygdala gets tripped and they're in that fight or flight where their thinking brain's not even online, immediately the parents trip too. And we're not going to get to anything healthy, helpful in those moments. And so if we have a code word like banana or whatever it is, then we say that means we're going to go to our spaces, we're going to breathe, we're going to move, we're going to use the coping strategies that get us regulated, and then we come back and talk together. And that can be a game changer for families.
That's so good. So I have a confession.
Okay, tell us.
Confession time. So I'm here to talk to you guys. Obviously, I follow both of your work. Big fan.
You're so kind.
And so this morning, as I wake up, I'm sitting at the Well Coffee Shop. I told you that's where I ended up here in Nashville. Beautiful little spot.
Yes.
Love good coffee. But in my thoughts, because this is me too, I have my coping mechanisms and I start getting anxious because the interview's coming, blah, blah, blah. And I say, you know what? I'm wasting my time here. This is not going to be beneficial for me. This is a self-talk that's going on in my head. So I pack up my computer, pack up everything, finish my coffee, drink water, and then I pace up and down that strip. Not pace, I walk for about 45 minutes. I just in the sun, in the sun. So getting the sunlight to do exactly what you're talking about. I am breathing, I am walking, I'm listening to instrumental music. And that is, even as a 38-year-old mom of 3, right? Professional. This is literally what I do for a living, is helping parents. I do it myself. You can't just preach it. You got to model it.
Amen.
So I'm right there with you.
I was doing it this morning too. Yes.
So good. Thank you for sharing that. And that's really applicable, right? Anyone can apply that.
Yes.
Very good. All right, David, we're going to switch over to communication now. Okay. This is like the cornerstone for every family. If you can't talk, then how do you expect to be a healthy, functioning adult in any sphere of any kind, right? So communication starts in the home, but it also helps that strong parent-child relationship. So what are active listening techniques? Because that's really important. We can't just be a talker. We have to be a listener. And also communication strategies that parents can use to create a safe space for the kids to share their thoughts and feelings openly.
That is such a great question. And I think the first thing that I would say to the wisdom of your question is, this is true for any one of us. Like, we cannot be listening and talking at the same time. And
even in our heads, right?
Exactly. And I love the wisdom of Anne Lamott talks a lot about that great acronym of WAIT, WAIT, which is why am I talking? And I think every one of us could benefit from asking ourselves that with more regularity, even if it's to the wisdom of what Sissy just said. If our kids are in fight or flight and we're trying to give them a lot of information or do a lot of coaching in those moments when really the only thing that should be happening is breathing and movement and regulation, then I don't need to be talking. I'm not helping. I actually could be harming in that moment. And so I think that's a great place to start. I think secondly, we love the equation of empathy and questions. We talk a lot about it. And I think that equation allows us to move into active listening in a great way. And, if I start with some kind of statement of support, my daughters tell me about a hard friend exchange, sweetheart, that sounds hard. Yeah. I begin with some kind of empathy statement and like, what did you do? Like, what helped? How'd you navigate that? I think there's something so empowering in those questions. I'm communicating to a kid I love, like, I believe you're smart and resourceful and God's given you everything you need inside of you to find your way through hard circumstances, difficult relationships. So I think that equation's important. And then one more thought that came to mind is Sissy and I do a lot of coaching in our work with families around one more acronym I'll throw out that we call VOMP, VOMP, which is a great template for helping kids, whether it's siblings who are in conflict or parent to child, friend to friend, any relationship, navigate your way through a hard circumstance. And the V stands for I'm going to voice my frustration. The O is I'm going to own my part. M is practice some empathy. I'm going to walk a mile in that person's shoes. I'm going to ask, what was that like for you? How'd that feel when I said that? And then the P is let's come up with a plan for moving forward. And we've coached a lot of families in VOMP over the years. My favorite memory of working with one family, they had a 4th grade son and they had been practicing with a lot of consistency. He and his sister would go at it. The mom said, I VOMP with my daughter a good bit around things when we get to stuck places. And they'd been practicing with so much regularity that I was sitting with this 4th grade boy one day and he was like telling me about his day. And he was like, I had to VOMP with some kids on the playground today.
That's so cute.
I cracked up. And just the thought of this 4th grade boy like coaching these guys who are having a difficult exchange in the middle of a sport, like, hey, all right, let's wait. It's his person to talk. All right, what are you frustrated with over here? Like, I just thought, I can't imagine all the ways that's going to benefit that young man in his future relationships. Like, he's been practicing with this much regularity what it looks like to work through conflict, what it looks like
What a
to
lucky wife.
listen. Exactly.
Mm,
Absolutely. What an amazing dad that
Right.
guy's going to be at
yes.
some point. And so that would be one I would say could be a great tool in terms of communication.
That's really great. That's great. And I also think that whenever you, to your point of conflict, this little boy, playground, soccer, whatever it is, conflict is everywhere in the
Yes.
workforce, with your spouse, with
Yes.
your kids. And I have even worked with adults in office because I do workshops too in businesses. And one of like grown women that had no idea how to navigate conflict,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
And that's because they didn't do it growing up.
Right.
And so what a blessing it is for you parents to do it at home, to start now, to lean into the awkward, because that is a life skill that's priceless
that
we're
we
giving
all
them.
need.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Necessary.
Absolutely. Okay, so Sissy, we'll go back to you now.
Okay.
And you've done a lot of talk over this about self-esteem,
Yes.
right? And that self-worth.
Mm.
Obviously, both of those things combined, it's almost the equation for confidence, right?
Mm,
Self-esteem
yes.
plus self-worth equals confidence.
Yes.
And we see a lot of lack in our kids nowadays in that. So some of the gaps that you see in society, what would those be? Or that you hear that, whether it's with
Mhm.
your clients or that just as you are sitting at a coffee shop that you observe and you hear. But how can parents fill in those
Mm.
gaps so our kids can be more confident in who God created them to be?
Amen. Yes. I mean, I do think one would be independence. I think we're doing too much for kids. And I really believe not only does that impact their anxiety. So I've written a couple books about anxiety, and the lay person's definition I came up with is that anxiety is an overestimation of the problem and an underestimation of themselves. And so if I'm rescuing a child, which our two most common responses to hard situations are escape and avoidance. And so if I'm rescuing a child because they are appearing anxious, I'm basically affirming that definition. It is too big. It's too
Wow.
hard and you're too small. Never what any parent who's listening to your podcast
Right.
would want to be communicating, and we still do it. And I think independence is directly linked to working through anxiety, learning the skills it takes for any of us to do hard things, and confidence. And so we love to ask the question when we're teaching seminars. We'll say to parents, if there's nothing else we want you to write down, which maybe if there's nothing else you want us to take away from your time with me during this conversation, I want you to think about this. What are two things you're doing for your kids right now that they can do for themselves? And what are two things you're doing for your kids that they can almost do for themselves? And I want you to stop doing all four. Because when we can let them do hard things, they're going to grow more confidence. It is that simple.
Mm-hmm.
With help, with support,
Sure.
anxious kids need coping strategies, all those things, but we've got to let them find their way to doing hard things. And then the other thing I would say, and I mean, even to your point about kindergarten's the new first grade and the athletics that we're talking about, the hockey guy, it's so intense that I think forever kids need to have found something that they love, that they feel some degree of competence in. They don't have to be the best. And now we're having so many kids who pull out of things and don't even develop a love for it because they're worried they're not the best. We're sometimes worried they're not the best. And Mary Piper is a psychologist that has been writing for a long time, and she talks about the need for girls in particular, but I think boys too, to have their North Star, that when things are hard in a school day, that they think, at least this afternoon, I get to go play soccer, or I get to go volunteer with my mom. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is, but something that they can hang their little hats on and feel like, I can do this. I feel good about myself when I'm doing that. And so some of that is we need to peel back the competition, peel back the layers of achievement, and help them find something that they love and brings them to life, to lean in, as you talk about. That's a beautiful way to say that. And when we're watching, we're going to see those things in our kids that we can lean into.
That's so good. Zelensky is his name, by the way.
Oh, Zelensky.
Yes, the hockey player. It came to me when you were
Gotcha.
talking. You said hockey
Yes.
guy. I was like, oh, it's Zelensky. That's his name.
That's good.
But you know what I love about the point that you made too is the competence piece. So we have a family vision statement, and in our family vision statement, we talk about the word competence because it doesn't look the same for everybody. And nowadays, the comparison that's going on, you brought up the
crazy.
phone and the
Yes.
it's a trap And it's a trap of the enemy to hold parents back, to keep us doubting everything that we are doing, including our own confidence as how we are handling the situations. And then kids too, if we expose them too early, which is going to lead us to our next point, David, that I want to really dive in with you about this digital time and that exposure that we currently have with screen time. Listen, I know technology is not going anywhere, and there's a lot of fruit that can come from it, but there's also a lot of, again, comparison and just negative things that we won't even get into the research with what it does to the brain. We'll just go into screen time in healthy ways that we can bring in screens on our day-to-day. What would be some of your suggestions?
Love that you ask it in
I
that
know,
way,
me
because I think it
too.
is where we so often only camp out and just
Yeah.
all the dangers, all the bad stuff, and thinking about the reality of what you just named. Like, it is a part of all our lives, and it can be a tool for good. And so how could we first be thinking about all the different ways that we could make technology work for us? We laugh with parents of young kids and we'll say, that age old saying of there's an app for everything. Well, there is, and there are chore apps. And so it's like, it's
That's good.
overwhelming with multiple
Yes.
kids to keep up with,
Yep.
okay, you're responsible for what chore, and if allowance is tied to that, like, get a chore app, make technology work for you in different ways. I think that's a great way to think about it. But also, we talk a lot about, with the animal of technology. I think it's important for us as parents to think in two ways. One is really prioritizing our kids' health over their happiness, And I
That's
think
good.
we're living in a moment in time where I think happiness can become the ultimate objective. I just want my kids to feel happy. And what the three of us know as adults is I do feel happy in the day at some point. It's minimal, and I feel content in a lot of different moments, and I feel frustrated in different moments. And
Mm.
so if we're only preparing our kids for happy, they're going to be overwhelmed in their adult lives and discovering, like, some days that only
Yeah.
happens about 10 minutes of the day.
Right.
And then contentment is the greater goal. And then just trying to navigate a lot of hard things, and frustration is the other. So I think that's a great benchmark to consider. I think also we really encourage parents to think about technology the same way we think about driving. So, in the state of Tennessee, you aren't eligible to get a permit until you're 15.
Mhm.
And then you got to spend a whole year in the car with your parent,
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
just some
Right.
random adult driver, your parent giving you input, practicing, probably having your first fender bender, all the things that happen that are part of the learning. And then when they turn 16, we don't just throw car keys at them and say, do your best. Let
got
me know
it.
how that works for you, but we're going to have different ways of tracking to make sure they get from point A to point B, because what we're doing is seeing this as a progression of learning new big skills. And if we were to approach technology in that same way, waiting until down the
Mhm.
road, giving a little bit of a time, offering a lot of oversight and supervision. And then as kids make mistakes, we pull
Mhm.
back the rope and they lose some
Yes.
freedom.
Right.
And then they re-earn the opportunity to be responsible with that again. I think that framework could be really helpful. And then last thought would just be kind of back to the there's an app for everything.
Mm.
Figure out what tools work best for your family so that offering that oversight is more manageable. We love the great guys who created the RO tool,
Mm.
ARO. That's an amazing tool that helps families monitor screen time. We love the folks at Bark. There are a lot of great tools out there that can make managing the animal of technology not
Mhm.
as overwhelming. Whereas I think we've got to be the management or the oversight over that completely ourselves. And that's just too much for any parent to
Mm.
take on.
Yeah.
That's really good. I
Mhm.
love that. I love also that you brought up that, and then when they fail, we bring it
Yes.
back in.
Yes.
Because
As they will in this day and
boy,
time.
do we not just have to create an environment where, man, I understand that you failed. You know what? I failed today too. Let me tell you about my
Yes.
failure.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite things to do with my kids when they
Yes.
fall short and they do something, is that I'm like, boy, let me tell you about my big fail today too. And I lean in with them because
So good.
there's no perfection. Nobody's perfect but Jesus.
Right.
Totally.
Right?
Yes.
And so if we just have this mentality of, I'm sorry, let's figure this out. And that's where I think the communication piece also comes in,
Yes.
right? That you can say, hey,
Absolutely.
so what led here? Let's unpack this a little bit. So I
Mhm.
thank you for bringing that up. Now, what about for the parents? because
Mm.
we're going to go there, that are just like, it's too late for me. I don't even know where to start. I'm too far gone. My kid is too far gone. I can't
Mm.
reel them in. So what would you say is just a simple, we're not going to go with complicated because we don't like complicated, but a simple yet impactful first step that you both would recommend that they take today? As they
Mm.
finish this episode, they hit stop, they can go and put into practice that's really going to impact and then maybe even encourage
Mm.
them.
Mm. Good.
I mean, I think to your point, Kelly, the things that you've talked about, communication, regulation, as a family to sit down and talk about how are we doing, almost like a report card or a meeting you would have with a teacher quarterly to say, what are some areas we need to grow as a family?
Yeah.
How do you feel like you're doing? How are we doing? What do we want to change? Where we just start with really having a good, strong look at where things are. Because I think, again, we're not slowing down enough to really take inventory.
That's good.
And we can't figure out where we're going until we figure out certainly where we are. And so that would be where I would start. And I cannot fathom what it would have been like to sit with my parents and them say, how can I grow as a mom or dad? What can I do better? And I mean, how empowering that is for kids, how confidence building, how communication building, I mean,
Right.
all of those things. So that's one thing I would recommend.
I love
Would
that.
you add?
That's really good.
I think I would say to any parent listening, I want to give you the reminder of, we know this, but I think it's easy to lose, of just play the long game in
Mm.
parenting. I think, I laugh with parents of boys all the time who, are maybe nearing their 18th birthday and they're worried they haven't taught them
Mhm.
enough or they haven't practiced enough in certain spaces. And I'm like, most developmental theorists agree that a boy is done with his adolescence somewhere between 23 and 25.
Mhm.
So 18 is not the finish line. Like, let's push that farther
It's
down the
society's,
road.
right? It's
Yes,
society's
Right.
finish line, but
yes.
it's really
Totally.
not
My
developmental.
goodness.
Right.
He may only be a third of the way through adolescence at 18. And so let's think on what that looks like. And within that, if I think about 25 years, and I would even argue having kids in their mid 20s, that we're not going to stop parenting at that point. And
That's
so
good.
they're still going to need us. They're still going to want input. My daughter, who's brilliant, has her master's degree, still calls sometimes just because she wants to talk something through. And I get to be a dad in those moments in a different way, but
Right.
still a dad. And so if we're thinking on it in that way, I think it can take away some of the panic and the urgency that we feel like we have to get these things locked down by this point, and that parenting is a long game and development is slow. And we've got to trust the work of God in that slow work of development that's happening in our kids.
Trust. Such a good word.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And building trust whenever we sit with our kids too and talk, right? That's what we're doing
Yes.
too. So I love that we have family meetings on
It's
Sundays.
so good.
And we just talk. We're like, hey, do we have our oldest dog sits and does all these things? And I'm like, I need to know your schedule too. As they get older,
Yes.
that's what starts happening, right? There was just like, we need to navigate everybody's schedule. What do we have on the week today? And that, even knowing the plan for the week, already simplifies so much of our, oh, wait, I have this coming up. So
Yes.
I love both of those things so much. We're going to lean into what you said a little bit, David, a little further. The long haul, right? Parenting is forever. It's every day. Like it never ends. And so often we get carried away with the day to day, all of those tasks,
Yes.
all of the demands of the sports and the academics, all of the things that it kind of overshadows our heart. But whenever we look at motherhood, which was really what we're talking about here, right? This special episode for our motherhood series, whenever we think about Proverbs 31, it says that the mom or that the woman gives instructions in kindness. And I just love that. And I'm like, dude, I just want to lean into my kids with kindness. And I'm very energetic and very seldomly am I quiet. I always have, like, bleh. But ultimately, my home is everybody's safe haven. And it's where I want them to keep coming back to. I want my porch to be the loudest back porch on the block, full of kids and boys. I always told my husband, I want to be the house everybody comes to. Right? Because I want my kids to always have this revolving door in my house. So what would you guys recommend that for us to reconnect with that purpose of motherhood, that legacy that we are leaving behind, and not just feeling like an Uber driver all the
Yes.
time, which is what we do. But
Yes.
what would y'all recommend?
As you were talking, I was thinking about, all the places moms are driving, all the soccer games, all the music lessons, all the things, and how kids, when you think about the long game, kids are not going to remember the Tuesday, April 29th soccer practice they went to, but they would remember that you skipped that day as a surprise. And you went to the park and you actually threw the football with them, or you
so good.
were on a swing beside them. So thinking about stepping back from this rat race that is motherhood today and that is growing up, and what are places that you can surprise your kids, not just with kindness, but with connection and sitting and paying attention. And I have a 6 and 3-year-old nephew that I spend a lot of time with, and I have noticed how often lately my 3-year-old nephew, they call me Diddy. And he will look at me if I'm on my phone, even if I'm listening to him. If I'm on my phone, he will say, Diddy, I can't see your eyes.
Ooh.
So convicting. 3. They start to notice. And I need to put down that dumb phone, and I need to get on the floor and play Candyland with them. Those are the things that they're going to remember. And so just thinking about taking a step back, and where are the places we can really just pour into connection and kindness and relationship, because those are the things that are going to last, and the memories that are going to last.
Thank you.
So
That's great.
good.
Really good.
I think I would only say I want to remind any mom listening, like, just you are doing holy, sacred work. Like the
Amen.
shaping
Amen.
of
That's good.
lives is holy, sacred work. And Sissy and I have this unique perspective on that holy, sacred work, in that we both lost our moms in close proximity to each other. And I don't know that a week goes by that we don't tell some story or think on or ask the question out loud, like, can you imagine what our moms might say right now? That I think is all the evidence of this holy, sacred work. Like, that we don't have access to our moms this side of heaven right now in this way in the everyday, and yet their impact is still so great and so strong and so present for both of us.
And that, I'll speak for myself, I gave my mom fits along the way. She wouldn't have known that at 54, I would be saying, I wish I knew what my mom thought.
Yeah.
I wish I could
Yes.
ask her. So you're not going to see
Absolutely.
evidence of it right now, but it is a long game of relationship.
It is.
Yes, and of holy work. Love that word.
And I think, we can show up most with our kids when we lean into that great wisdom of the flight attendants give us every time we fly. Parents, put on your oxygen mask first. And I think we can so easily, A, forget that, and B, I think buy into, this world's idea that, a mother's job is to be a martyr. And as opposed to, really leaning into the wisdom, what does it look like for me to your great word of kindness, be kind to myself
Right.
first, so that I can extend this kindness to this holy, sacred work that I think is just necessary. And I would just simply want to remind moms of that.
Amen.
So good, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank
What a joy it is to
you.
sit with you both in this
You
beautiful
too.
yellow building that you guys have, with the wisdom that you share. Thank you very much. I appreciate the wisdom, the experiences, and doing life together
It's a
as we lead.
joy.
It
It is a
is an
joy to spend
honor
time with you.
too. Yeah.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Kelly.